The press release didn't use the word retreat. It never does. The language was careful. Strategic refocus, enterprise value creation, deepening partnerships. But what happened in the spring of 2024 to Aleph Alpha? The Berlin-based AI startup, once described as Europe's answer to OpenAI, backed by SAP, Bosch, and Schwarz Group, valued at over €1 billion, was a retreat. It stopped competing in the frontier model race. It repositioned as an enterprise software company. The ambition of building a sovereign European large language model, competitive with GPT-4 and capable of processing sensitive government data within European jurisdiction, was scaled back into something more commercially defensible and significantly less transformative. Nobody announced a defeat, because nobody had to. But the capital flowing into Mistral in France, into the handful of remaining European AI labs, and most visibly into the American hyperscalers operating European data centers, tells a different story. Europe entered the AI decade with genuine research talent, serious institutional ambition, and a regulatory framework it believed would become a global standard. 3 years in, the capital is leaving, the talent is following, and the window for building competitive AI infrastructure at a European scale is narrowing faster than most policymakers are willing to acknowledge publicly. This video is about understanding the mechanism behind that capital drain, why it's happening, which parts of it are structural rather than cyclical, and what it means for European investors watching the most important technological transition of their lifetimes from an increasingly peripheral position. There's something specific about how Europe relates to technology that shapes this entire story, and it's worth naming directly. Europe's response to the dominance of American and Chinese tech platforms over the past decade has been regulatory. GDPR, the Digital Markets Act, the AI Act. These are genuine policy achievements that reflect real values about privacy, competition, and the governance of powerful technologies. They are also the product of a specific institutional instinct. When confronted with something powerful and difficult to control, Europe reaches for rules. It is what democratic institutions do well, and there is nothing inherently wrong with it. But regulation and capital formation are different activities, and they run on different timelines. The AI Act was debated for 3 years and passed into law, while the underlying technology was doubling in capability every 12 months. By the time the regulatory framework was settled, the competitive landscape it was designed to govern had already moved 3 generations forward. European AI labs, operating under compliance uncertainty, faced fundraising environments where American and Gulf investors, the ones writing the largest checks, priced European regulatory risk into their valuations. That pricing is a discount, and discounts at the seed and Series A stage compound into enormous structural gaps at the Series C and beyond. The capital asymmetry is the first mechanism, and it's the one that drives everything else. The numbers are not subtle. In 2023, the United States invested approximately $67 billion in AI startups. China invested roughly $8 billion. The entire European Union, 27 countries, 450 million people, the world's largest single market, invested approximately $5 billion. The gap between the US and EU alone is more than 13 to 1. This isn't a funding gap that European governments can close with innovation grants and public research programs, valuable as those are. It's a private capital gap, driven by the depth of American venture and growth equity markets, the density of the American tech ecosystem, and the liquidity that American public markets offer. AI investors at exit. European AI companies that reach a certain scale face a choice that their American counterparts don't: list in London or Frankfurt at a fraction of the valuation, or list in New York, and increasingly, they're choosing New York or getting acquired before they reach the listing stage at all. The talent drain is the second mechanism, and in AI specifically, it's arguably more consequential than the capital gap. AI capability is unusually concentrated. The difference between a frontier AI lab and a good AI lab is not a marginal productivity difference, it's a qualitative capability gap. The researchers who built GPT-4, Gemini, and Claude are a specific and small cohort of people. Europe produces a disproportionate share of them, through ETH Zurich, in Aria, the Max Planck Institutes, Cambridge, and a network of world-class machine learning research groups, and then it loses them. Not all of them, but the ones who want to work on the largest, most computationally intensive, most consequential models follow the compute, the capital, and the talent density. all of which concentrate in San Francisco, Seattle, and London to a lesser extent. The AI Act's provisions on frontier models, the requirements around transparency, testing, and registration for the most powerful systems, have been cited repeatedly by European AI researchers as a factor in their calculus about where to build, not as a prohibition, as a friction. In a competitive environment where the difference between leading and following is measured in months, additional compliance friction matters. The compute dependency is the third mechanism, and the one least discussed in European policy circles. Training a frontier AI model requires enormous quantities of specialized processing power, primarily NVIDIA GPUs, which are manufactured in Taiwan, designed in California, and allocated through a supply chain that prioritizes the largest buyers. The largest buyers are American hyperscalers, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta. European AI labs, competing for GPU allocation against organizations with 50 times their capital, are structurally disadvantaged in the training compute race before the first line of code is written. The EU has committed to building European supercomputing infrastructure through the Euro-HPC initiative, and facilities in Kajani, Barcelona, and Bologna represent genuine progress. But the gap between Euro-HPC capacity and what OpenAI or Google DeepMind can access remains substantial, and it widens with each new generation of hardware. Here's where this becomes directly relevant to you as an investor. Because the capital drain from European AI has investment implications that run in two directions simultaneously. The negative implication is straightforward. European listed tech companies are underrepresented in the AI value chain in a way that is unlikely to correct quickly. The DAX, the CAC 40, the AEX, these indices are not where AI investment returns are being generated. Investors with exclusively European equity exposure are watching the most significant technological value creation of this decade happen in markets and companies they don't own. The positive implication is less obvious, but equally important. European companies are not building the frontier models, but they are among the most sophisticated adopters of AI in the world, and AI adoption, embedding AI into industrial, financial, logistics, and healthcare workflows, is where the productivity gains actually land in the real economy. SAP's AI integration across enterprise resource planning, Siemens's industrial AI applications, the digital transformation of European financial services infrastructure. These are genuine value creation stories that don't require Europe to win the model race to benefit from it. The practical investment posture that follows from this is a split, global AI exposure through US-listed technology, ETFs for the frontier model value chain, combined with selective European equity exposure in the industrial and enterprise software companies best positioned to capture AI productivity gains domestically. The iShares MSCI World Information Technology Sector ETF, QDVE, provides broad exposure to global technology, including the major AI infrastructure names. For European industrial AI beneficiaries, the picture is more stock-specific and requires more active analysis. Now, what's actually operating psychologically in how European investors and policymakers respond to this situation? The first dynamic is regulatory comfort, the belief that because Europe set the rules, it is somehow directing the game. The AI Act gives European institutions real authority over AI deployment within European borders. It does not give European companies competitive advantage in building AI. These are different things, and conflating them produces a false sense of strategic control. The referee has authority. The referee doesn't win the match. The second is continental exceptionalism, the assumption that the European model, which emphasizes values, governance, and sustainability over raw growth, will ultimately prove more durable than the American model of move-fast capital deployment. This may be true in a 30-year frame. In a 5-year frame, which is the relevant horizon for AI competitive dynamics, the model that's winning is the one deploying the most capital and attracting the most talent, and that is not currently the European model. Durability and competitiveness are different things. The European model may outlast the American one in important respects and still lose the AI decade to it. The third is what I'd call the Airbus fallacy, the belief that European industrial policy has a track record of building competitive global champions through state coordination, which it does in aerospace and automotive, and that the same approach will work in AI. The Airbus analogy is frequently cited in European AI policy discussions. It is not a perfect analogy. Airbus was built over 30 years with predictable manufacturing processes, established markets, and stable technology trajectories. AI is developing on a 12-month doubling curve with winner-take. Most dynamics. The playbook is different. The capital is moving. The talent is moving. The compute is concentrated where it was always going to concentrate, near the capital and the talent. Europe's response to this, over the next 5 years, will determine whether it remains a consumer and regulator of AI, or whether it finds a path to meaningful participation in the value chain. Both of those outcomes are investable. They're just invested in very differently. What would you like me to go deeper on next? The specific European companies best positioned to capture AI productivity gains without needing to win the model race. The mechanics of accessing US AI infrastructure investment from a European retail account, or the regulatory timeline and its likely impact on European AI valuations? Drop it in the comments. Aleph Alpha didn't lose the AI race. It stopped running it. For European investors, the question isn't whether to mourn that, it's whether to understand what it signals and position accordingly before the rest of the market does.